This is the 2025 KGM Torres, a large family SUV that's designed to take on the likes of the MG HS, the Dacia Duster, as well as other rivals. I think it looks the part. It's got loads of standard equipment and a cavernous cabin and cargo area. But I think unfortunately, because of what's underneath it, I can't really recommend it right now. So I'm here to tell you why, take you on a full tour of the car and get it out on the road to see what it's all about. So the KGM Torres starts at around £32,000 here in the UK, ranges up to about 38,000. There's a couple of trims to choose from, the first being the K30, which comes with quite a generous amount of kit as standard, to be honest. So you've got stuff like artificial leather, heated steering wheel, dual zone climate control, dual 12.3 inch driver's displays, 18-inch alloys, and all the safety tech as standard as well, including rear cam, which is quite good to have as standard. And then you step up to the K40 trim. The K40 has real leather, TomTom sat nav, powered tailgate, 20-inch alloys, and blind spot monitoring, which also has rear cross traffic alert, which is quite handy to have. You can get that one with an all-wheel drive. In terms of powertrain, you are limited literally just to the one engine, which is a 1.5 turbo 4-cylinder, 161 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 10.8 seconds, mated to a 6-speed ASIN automatic gearbox. And that auto is a standard kind of torque converter style, nothing too special, and it's a little bit sluggish in this unit, unfortunately. There's also an EV version, which has just over 287 miles of range. It uses BYD batteries and has a really good battery warranty, just over 200 horsepower. That might be the one to look into, to be honest. I'd love to know what you think of the design. I really like it, especially the front end. Kind of looks like a cross between a Jeep and an Evoque, I think, in my opinion. Looks quite rugged, and I like the kind of the accents, like the really sharp angles on the front here. Looks really good. These nice daytime running lights. You've also got this kind of aggressive front grille and this red detailing down here. Just, yeah, it looks really the part, I think, and kind of a more rugged design than you'd expect on a car of this segment. This one being the top end one, you've got the 20-inch diamond cut alloys, which I do think finish it off nicely as well. Overall aesthetic I really like, even this kind of boxy rear end, but I do think this back design is a little bit odd. It's kind of reminiscent of the older SUVs that have the kind of the hump for the spare wheel cut out. In this case, that's not what this is. It's not got anything to do with that. Also, you'll notice as well, because I'm standing here in the rear area, the car automatically decides to open the boot for me if you stand there too long, which is a kind of nice feature, but can be annoying, especially in an instance like I've pretty much just demonstrated. There is an automatic tailgate on this version, and it works pretty well. And unfortunately, as you can see, like from that handle, you'd kind of expect that it opens like a door, kind of like out this way, which would be really cool, but yeah, unfortunately not in this instance. This one does have a tow bar on as well, which is an optional extra, and you've got rear parking sensors, rear camera. Overall, I think it looks all right from the back. It looks quite rugged, like I say, especially this kind of like large C-pillar area here, I think looks pretty good. And the shark fin aerial, you can kind of see on the top of the car. You've also got some quite kind of nice lines up there. Overall, I do think it looks pretty good for what it is, but I don't know, you tell me, what do you think? I prefer it from the side and the front. This metallic paint is great as well. You can see it's this kind of like dark greyish silver. Really pops. You've got so much metallic flake in here, and it really does look great in this light especially. You can see there just the amount of detail you've got in that paintwork. And yeah, I do just like the details on the car. This one is equipped with these larger wheels, which I think do make it look better as well. Overall, pretty good, and I do really like the bonnet design as well. These kind of like Range Rover style bits here, and you've got the sort of the handles here. It just looks really interesting, and yeah, a lot different to some of the rivals, I would say. So let's step inside the Torres and see what it's all about inside. Now, I quite like the interior design of this, to be honest. It's got kind of that Cupra vibe to it, or kind of the MG, what they're doing with this kind of contrast copper orange stitching. And the material's not too bad, to be fair. Got some squishy materials here. Gloss black, not a massive fan of gloss black, but it's not the worst I've seen in the car. And the switch gear is kind of okay. It's not particularly great, but it is what it is. Down here we've got a nicely divided door bin, which has like a kind of a segment here that you can kind of cram a bottle in or whatever, and this nice textured finish on the speaker area, which I do quite like. And then getting inside the car, you've got nice clear controls for your seats. These ones are the leather, and you've also got these nice rubberized mats, which are a bit grotty. I apologize for that, but they're really easy to clean because they're rubberized and they fit in really nicely. They just hook in, so there's none of those annoying poppers to come out, which is really good. You've literally just got these hooks, and they just fit super nice, and they're super easy to maintain when you're taking this out in the mud. In terms of your kind of overall aesthetic, it's quite nice. You've got a floating center console there with some storage underneath, quite common in cars now, but overall it's a nice use of space. And even on the seats here, the seats are really good actually. I've actually been quite impressed with the sort of ergonomics and how they feel and the quality of them. And you've even got, like in the Kias and Hyundais, the kind of switch gear on the side there to operate the passenger seat from the driver's side, which is nice. So let's hop in then and I'll show you a little bit more about what the interior is like in the car. So there we go, it's singing to us, which is all happy days. I'm going to turn the car on completely just so that we've got everything going on. You can see that the screens spring to life. Now this one is a little bit slow to come on sometimes, and I actually had an instance the second time I drove the car where this screen failed on me completely. Annoyingly, there's a power button, but it's on the display, so when you're driving along you can't operate that. All of the climate controls are in this screen, and even stuff like your drive mode select, auto start stop, all of that stuff is on the display there, which is really not ideal when you're kind of in a situation where you desperately need to get access to it and it's not working. So I ended up having to put my phone in the cup holder here and use that for my sat nav, and I had to turn the car off and on again and leave it for 10 minutes to power cycle it before it would start working, which was really not ideal, especially as a first impression. So something to bear in mind. This has been quite buggy. Overall, the system itself isn't too bad. You've got your climate controls on the right hand side here, which include heated steering wheel, and the nice thing about heated steering wheel is it stays on by default if you leave it on, so when you next start the car it will stay on, which is quite cool. And you can swipe this away if it decides to, there you go, to do that. And then you've got your drive mode selected and everything up here, so you've got like different terrain modes, and you've also got drive modes which are change your display over here. I apologise for the flickering of the displays, they're just kind of like not the best quality ones. This is sport mode that you see here, and then you've also got your standard mode and winter mode as well, and then some other drive modes like hill hold assist and that kind of thing. But overall this system isn't too bad. You've got quite quick access to stuff like turning off the super annoying speed limit warning, which is literally the worst I've ever heard. It's so jarring. And then you've also got like options for your cruise control, your ambient lighting, and your door and tailgate stuff. It does work quite well. You've got ambient lighting that runs all the way across the dash here, which you can't see too well in this light, but you can see it under there. It also extends onto these panels in the doors too, and a little bit over there, so that's quite a nice touch, and that's standard across the range. Overall, this works okay. I use it mainly for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, of course, and you do have rear sleep, like in Kias and Hyundais, where it turns off the rear speakers if you've got kiddies asleep back there, which is a nice touch. They definitely have taken inspiration from some of their other kind of Korean counterparts. What I do like is this kind of dashboard. You've got a nice kind of central vent, and this what looks almost like gloss carbon effect trim. It's not, but it's got that nice shimmer to it. In the sun you can see it's really nice, and you've got this textured sort of copper finish that runs all the way along the dash, which I actually quite like, to be honest. I do like the way it looks, and yeah, overall material quality isn't too bad. Even like down here, like putting pressure on this center area, there's not too much wobble in here. You've got proper cup holders with grippers in, which I appreciate, and it's got rubberized center. You've got a little cubby there. You've got a USB-C charging down there, which has 27 watt power delivery, and then 120 watt outlet there. You've then got a generous center section here, which also has a wireless charger for your phone, which annoyingly you kind of, if you've got it plugged in, you have to kind of put it upside down, but at least it's got a rubber pad in to keep it secure. Drive mode select is very similar to what you get in Volkswagen cars. You've got kind of up for reverse, down for drive, and then park button there, and you've also got your parking brake here as well. It's a little bit slow to respond. Like if I'm in reverse and then I want to go, so it's in reverse now, and then we get the rear view camera up. Rear view camera is not too bad, it's not the best I've seen, but it does also have the cross traffic monitoring, so if something's approaching from one of the sides it will alert you, which is a nice touch. But yeah, if you want to, you can either do it twice or you can press and hold it, but it just takes a little bit too long for my liking, but that's me being quite picky. Overall, steering wheel is quite nice. You've got media controls on the left, you've got cruise controls on the right, and you've got paddle shifters as well for your gears. I wouldn't recommend really using them too much, just on the basis that it's quite a slow gearbox to respond. It's a 6-speed Aisin automatic, and it's just a little bit sluggish. And I do think they could have benefited from putting the KGM lettering across the steering wheel here instead of this scratchy horror that they've put. It just kind of makes everything feel a little bit more cheap, which it's not. And then this is really well damped. I really like the way the indicators feel, even though it's kind of a nasty plastic to touch, like they do feel really nicely weighted, and I do really like that. You've also got, by cycling this button here, you've got an option to change this center screen to your navigation, so you can have full maps on there as well, which is pretty cool if you wanted to keep the other screen free for other bits and bobs. But it's TomTom Maps, it's okay, it's not the best. I just stick to using Apple CarPlay, Android Auto where possible. But it's nice that it's there, because a lot of manufacturers, especially in this sort of segment, don't include full maps apart from Volkswagen Audi Group. But the one thing that does bother me is this, and that is that fuel economy. That is my average over a couple of 100 miles is 26.6 mpg, and that's mixed driving as well. It's just not an efficient engine, unfortunately, and with a full tank, you're looking at probably less than 300 miles of range, which is quite poor in a segment now, you know, that has lots of cars that are mild hybrid or full hybrids and sort of various things like that. So the electric one might be the one to look at if you're sort of seriously looking into one of these. But overall, design's nice big chunky button there, and your kind of climate vents a little bit like a Cupra, I guess, in terms of styling here. And overall, like I say, the seats have thoroughly impressed me. I can't have any complaints there. So up here, you've also got just your standard lighting, LED, nothing too fancy, and your microphones, and auto dimming rear view mirror as standard, which is cool as well. So overall, I can't say it's terrible. It's fairly well built in here and solid. Like, even though you do have some scratchy materials, you kind of expect that in a lower class of car. I just think some of the rivals are built a little bit better, and the infotainment really concerns me, which is something that kind of put me off from the off, really. So let's get into the back here. The back is actually quite generously spaced, to be fair. There is a transmission hump, but it's not the worst that I've seen, and overall it's quite spacious. You do have a 60/40 split back here, and you've also got some cup holders in the center, which is nice, and the quality again feels quite nice, and I like the look and the pattern of everything. Also Isofix points that are hidden between the leather, which is quite practical, and these nice little kind of grippers for holding in these seat belts so they don't flail around everywhere, which I think is a really nice touch, actually. So looking back here again, you've also got some nice features. You've got sunshades, which are super handy, and you've also got rear heated seats, which is quite generous too. So let's step in. The car's complaining that the key is not in the car, so stepping in here, you've actually got a decent amount of legroom. My driving position is set up for 6 foot, and I'm sitting back here with no problems at all. Could do with a little bit more fire support, but it's not terrible. Headroom is really good, and you've got pockets on the back of the chairs here, which also have kind of little pockets here, which would be ideal for like a mobile phone. And you've also got these sort of hooks on the back, which you might think are just shopping hooks, but actually they've got rubberized inserts in here, which I can feel, which means that you could slot like an iPad or a device in there and kind of use it as a sort of display in the back, which would be a nice thing as well. You've also got lighting back here, and in the center you've got a area with 2 USB-C 27 watt power delivery there, little cubby, which I'm not sure what would be useful for, and same again down there, kind of 2 slightly useless spaces, but you know, it's nice that they exist. And even the door cards back here have a decent amount of space. So overall, rear comfort, I would say, is up there. You can see even at 6 foot, I've got plenty of room, like a whole hand's width of room back here, and thigh support, although it's not the best, it's not the worst in class either. So realistically, I'm quite impressed with the rear space sitting back here. It's plentiful. And then opening this rear hatch as well, you've got plenty of space back here. This is actually pretty much the largest boot in its class. It's absolutely cavernous here. You've got a spare wheel under here, and also a space for your kind of load cover and everything like that. And although there's no kind of handles here to put down the rear seats, you can sort of reach in and grab them, and the 60/40 split comes up as 1 when you put it from this side, which is a nice touch. Yeah, overall I just think this is a massive space for a car of this size, and it's quite practical because of that opening as well. Right, so we're now out in the Torres. I'm going to do a 0 to 60 pull, and then let's talk about how she drives. This being the 4-wheel drive model, off the line is relatively easy. You can hear that engine does get a bit strained under load, and there's 60. So not the fastest for sure, but you know, it gets the job done, and it does feel nippier than the kind of figures might suggest, to be fair. I do find that realistically, I thought driving around town it was going to feel a little bit sluggish and stuff like that, but it feels pretty good. Driving assistance systems are also all included across the range, which is nice, and in this particular car they are a little bit intrusive. I find they kind of remind me of the slightly older Hyundai Kia systems, where you know, they're constantly trying to kind of pull you back in lane and stuff. There's a bit too much interference with the steering, in my opinion, but again, it's nice that they're all there. It's also got the radar for the front cruise, automatic safety braking, that kind of thing. I like the fact that when you're reversing, it's got the cross traffic assist, so if you're trying to pull out of a parking space, not only can you see on the cameras, but also it will alert you if someone's kind of coming past you as well, which is nice. Overall, it picks up okay. I think really the drawback in here, in terms of the actual driving experience, is this gearbox. It's a standard 6-speed auto. It's not like dual clutch or anything fancy. It's an ACEN box, which are generally known to be pretty bulletproof, but yeah, I just think it's quite slow to respond and kick down. If I go for a kick down now, it took literally like a second and a half before it did anything, and I don't think that's great. And if you manually take control on these paddles, it's a very similar experience. Not only that, but I also find that it then kind of gets stuck in manual mode and you can't really override that using the toggle, which is a bit bizarre. In terms of user experience though, it's quite nice in here. The tech is all okay. Like I said, I've had difficulties with the center screen, and it's kind of let me down on a number of occasions, which really worries me considering I've only had this car for a week or so. But you know, hopefully software updates and things in the future can kind of resolve a lot of those teething issues. But it is frustrating not having any physical controls. You can't even power cycle the middle screen. If I want to use the climate controls on the move, they're really fiddly, and I've got to reach right over, press the button, it takes me out of CarPlay completely, and then I've got to mess around with it, and it doesn't automatically put you back into CarPlay. You have to then go back into the menu to do that. Really poor experience on that front, which is a real shame. But seating position, nice. Visibility is pretty good. You've got a massive C-pillar, but I can see quite clearly out of the flat rear window, and the car's really easy to place on the road because it's quite boxy, so overall I've not got too much of a problem with it there. Mirrors are nice and large too, and you've got blind spot monitoring on the K40, and overall the actual ergonomics of the car aren't too bad, besides the kind of touchscreen nonsense. I really do think they've missed a trick with this though, in terms of that as well is your safety warning. So that's the speed limit warning. I strayed 1 mile an hour over the limit then, and it's one of the most intrusive I've heard. Very frustrating indeed. Also as well, you don't notice it too much at the speeds I'm going now, but once you're up to motorway speeds, there's loads and loads of wind noise, which is quite distracting, to be honest. And you really have to crank the stereo to kind of get over that, in my opinion. Kick down. It's not terrible. The gear changes are still quite jerky though, which is a bit disappointing in a brand new car. I know you don't necessarily have to have a dual clutch box to make it perfectly smooth, but even so, I just think this just feels a little bit outdated, to be honest with you. And the ride as well is quite fidgety. Like even on a straight road like this, I can feel the chassis kind of bobbing about, and it's quite firm. And there's not really much texture through the wheel either. Like I can kind of feel the road, but there's a bit of delay to the input. Little bit of body roll, like it just doesn't inspire much confidence. Right, let's give it a bit of beans around here and see what she does. Chucking it in. Oh my god. It's a little bit all over the place. I got a little bit of understeer and a little bit of oversteer, and the kind of the ride was a little bit all over the place. It's not quite as bad as I was expecting in terms of how wallowy it is and stuff, but it's certainly not the sort of car that you could have a lot of fun in. It feels like there's always a little bit of a delay to the steering input. Yeah, like, and there is a bit of texture through the steering wheel, to be fair. It's not the worst I've felt in terms of electronic steering input, but yeah, don't expect to be having much fun in this car, and it's quite unrefined. I feel like even I'm only doing 50 mile an hour at the moment, and I feel like I'm having to talk quite loudly over the tyre noise and the wind noise in the car, which doesn't make for a particularly nice experience on long journeys, as you can imagine. I'm on like a sort of windy country road now, which is quite uneven. Brakes feel quite inspiring, to be fair, because there's no hybrid tech. You don't get any of that spongy like regen braking stuff, which is obviously good. And this four-wheel drive model obviously inspires a little bit more confidence when it comes to a bit of off-roading or kind of just off-the-line capability, but like just pottering around it's okay, but it's when you give it some beans out of a junction or something, it's not so great. And the fuel economy is unfortunately what's most unforgivable about this car, to be honest with you. You're looking at around 27 mpg mixed driving, and that is terrible considering I get pretty much the same, if not more than that, in my Audi, which has a lot more power than this. So yeah, it's just inefficient, and that's kind of unacceptable now because a lot of these rival cars are hybrids, and if you could sacrifice a bit of space and go for something a bit smaller, you could get something like an MG ZS hybrid, which is significantly nicer to drive because it uses electric a lot of the time, completely self-charging, so you don't need to worry about kind of plugging it in or anything like that. and you still end up getting like 50, 55 mpg, which is way better than what I've been experiencing in this, in a smoother and faster car. Even your standard petrol rivals like the HS and also the Dacia Duster are still more efficient than this. So it's a really hard sell, and it's a shame because I really wanted to love this car. I think it really looks the part, and they've done such a great job with upgrading the exterior and interior features, and there's loads of kit as standard. And like I said, this is pretty much the roomiest car of its class. If you want sheer space, then this is definitely a good option, but there's too many trade-offs. To me, it feels a bit like shoving the internals of an iPhone 8 into an iPhone 16. It looks pretty and it should functionally be better, but underneath it's just a bit sluggish and unresponsive and just doesn't feel quite right. And that's exactly what I feel about this, not only in terms of the infotainment and interior tech, but also in terms of just the way it drives and feels. It just feels a little bit old-fashioned. As much as I wanted to love the KGM Torres, it's not a car that I can recommend at the moment, unfortunately. I think they need to make some refinements to the chassis and also just introduce some more drivetrain options. I do think the EV1 is one to look out for. It's not going to fix the shaky ride, but it will be a much better and smoother experience to live with day to day. And it also has a BYD battery with a very good warranty indeed. They say up to 1,000,000 kilometers warranty. 1,000,000. If you can deal with getting a slightly smaller car, my recommendation would actually probably be the MG ZS Hybrid Plus, because that comes in at less than 30 grand, so it's a massive saving. It's more powerful, also runs on electric quite a lot of the time, even though it's a full hybrid. And yeah, you'd probably get the same sort of after sales as you would with one of these. I would love to check out KGM's other cars, as well as the fact they're bringing out some new cars which do look interesting and hopefully have made some refinements and improvements over this one. Hopefully they want to work with me again in the future. I know this hasn't been the most positive review, but I need to be realistic. I need to tell you about some of the things that are wrong with this, and I think there's potential there, I really do. I think that they're really headed in the right direction, because when KGM used to be SsangYong in the UK, they had a terrible, terrible reputation, and hopefully that is on the turn. I definitely think they're headed in the right direction, so only time will tell. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.